Hey, everybody, it's Keegan Lamar, and I am so incredibly excited and honored to be able to have a very special guest on. Her name is Briana DuBose, and she is a former college basketball athlete. She's an upcoming author. She
Mm.
is also a management consultant and an advisor, and just really a jack of all trades in a whole lot of different areas. So, Briana, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored. I'm excited.
So I got connected to you through a mutual friend who I'm
Hmm.
actually currently working with, Taj
Hmm.
Deshawn, who works with Self Publish in 30 Days, because I'm working on a book that is called Forever Athlete. And I
Ooh.
stumbled upon a literary masterpiece that I immediately pre ordered called The ABCs of College Sports. Oh, no, The ABCs for College Athletes. Excuse
Hmm.
me.
No, you're good.
And I would love to dive into that in this episode. But first and foremost, I have to understand a little bit and really set the stage for you. You were a college athlete and you played
Hmm.
basketball. What was your experience like?
Well, it was up and down completely. And such a nice introduction, by the way. Very nice. Thank you. Thank you for having me. But my career was really up and down. It was, people don't understand that 99% of college athletes don't go on to play professional sports. So that 99% has a really extensive story. And a lot of times people don't understand it, they don't know it. And sometimes it just goes to the wayside, to be honest. We all hear about the success stories, the NFL, the NBA, professional soccer, or whatever you're playing. But, for the most of us, the majority of us, we're not going on to do that. So my career was really up and down. I started at VCU, and like we were talking about earlier, my first coach, she left for $500,000. She left for $500,000 to go
Which isn't a bad
coach.
deal.
It's not bad. She left to go to Minnesota, and I was also injured my first year. So I had a season-ending injury, had to get knee surgery. So I basically was starting over again. And for those who aren't familiar with like having injuries, I went through my entire career like up until then. So 18, 19 years, no injuries. And so boom, first year out the gate, it's like so much stress on your body. Injury, boom, I'm out of the season. Then my coach leaves. Then I have to start over with a new coach. And the new coach is trying to over recruit and like, kind of bring her people in. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, me starting my freshman year over again. I was like, I'm leaving this situation. It's not a good one. And I could talk about that all day, but we're doing a brief synopsis here. So what ended up happening was I transferred to American University, and American wasn't even on my radar the first time around when I was getting recruited, but the second time around, I was like, okay, my GPA is going to reset. I get it to restart. I have to sit out again. And because I thought I would be able to like roll into it, but because I signed papers that I didn't know what they were specifically stating, I had to sit out that transfer year,
Mm.
which we'll talk about, which I definitely put in the book. The importance of reading. It's not only fundamental, it could save you a lot of pain and agony. So I get to American, I know I have to sit out. I'm from Maryland, so American University's in DC. It's probably like 45 minutes on a good day if you don't have traffic, a little bit more if you do. So I was like, okay, now I have family support. I'm in a better school academically because my GPA is resetting,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to kind of like ride this out. And so senior year comes, I finally get to play, ironically, and I have another season-ending injury. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So a very up and down career. And we were talking about our backs earlier, but like my second season-ending injury was with my back, and I couldn't move, and it was so scary. It was probably the most scariest and most scariest. Oh my gosh, the most scary injury that I've ever had because I couldn't move, and your back is connected to everything. So I go to, a doctor, and she's like, yeah, you're shutting it down for the season. You have two partially ruptured discs with some leakage.
Sheesh.
And so you're done. You're done, done, done. So maybe not done from basketball forever, but like done for the season at least.
Yeah.
And so I potentially had 2 extra years from the sitting out the first time because my season ending injury freshman year, and then the one where I had to sit out when I transferred, but I opted out of both. So that's my story. And
And
I
there's
just like
so
kept
much there
pushing.
too, right? Like, I mean, and and I truly mean this, like
Mhm.
there's going to come a time where you absolutely, like, we're going to have to dive into a completely different topic just to be able to cover some of that other stuff, because like, you know, dealing with
Yeah.
injury and understanding recovery as like a human being
Mhm.
more so, and realizing that, I mean, whether it's recovery for sports or recovery for life, honestly, because
Yeah.
we've both had to deal with that, the post athlete, like professional athlete era, when you're having to
Mhm.
give a crap about everything else that you do and being functional for it. And then obviously the politics of sports, which was one of the reasons why my career ended as an
Mhm.
athlete. I couldn't afford to be an athlete anymore. And it was something
Mhm.
where there was just a decision that I put so much stress and emphasis on that was out of my hands. And so I
Mm.
left everything that I did up to someone else rather than take
Mhm.
control of it. And I reaped those rewards. And there was a coaching change, and same exact thing happened where there was recruiting where they wanted to bring in people who they initially thought rather than the people they inherited.
Mhm.
And rather than putting myself in a position where they said, you know what, we're good, right?
Mhm.
Like athletes have this tendency all the time where you hear something and you want to trust somebody, but then you realize that everybody's trying to have their own version of performance. And for some coaches, that means like trusting their own decisions and not
Mhm.
putting everything that their livelihood is banking on with someone who's already there in the system. Sometimes that's
Mhm.
just not the case and you can't
Mhm.
control that. So not only that, like the politics and all those other things, we'll get into that a whole nother time, because I think it's such
Absolutely.
an amazing thing for athletes to be able to understand as they're going through sports. It doesn't matter if it's high school or college or even
Mhm.
professionally, you deal with this stuff at every single level. So you go through college, you
Mhm.
have an absolutely incredible, unbelievable career there, right? With all
Mhm.
the injuries and all those other fun things.
Yeah.
And then you get into life thereafter.
Mhm.
And you ultimately get to a point where you feel compelled to be able to share a story.
Yes.
So I want to understand that mindset that triggered that. What what was that turning point where you went from, you know, just life after sports? I mean, I call it professionally. If you play it in the college level, you're a pro athlete. Like that's your
Mm.
job. When you go from life after a professional sporting career to
Mhm.
saying, let's talk about something that's bugging me enough that I need to share it. Tell me about that.
Well, to really put it to words, it was kind of like a domino effect. So my first year out, I am completely lost and I'm completely burnt out and I have no idea where I really want to go. I just know, okay, I just majored in psychology. I need to go to grad school. Like I will have no money if I don't go to grad school. So I knew I was like, I need a year to like figure this out and maybe work a little bit, but I need to go back to school. So I ended up applying to the University of Pennsylvania, and I'm like at my work desk, miserable in my little cubicle, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to check my admission status, see how this goes down, and I ended up getting in, and I couldn't even celebrate. I'm just like sitting at my desk, like, yes, I get to leave. I get to leave here. So I relocate to Philly, have this transformational and healing like experience because I made a promise to myself. I said I'm reclaiming everything that was taken from me. That includes time, that includes, mental health. I went and saw, pretty much I mean, I would count it as my first, but like I pretty much went and saw like my first therapist that I chose, like for myself, not a coach saying, do you want to talk to a performance coach or you want to do this or that? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, because I don't trust that. Like I went to
Yeah.
therapy for the first time, like on my own behalf, picking the therapist and all of that and just healing, So I made a promise to myself to reclaim everything that was taken from me. So doing clubs and doing, hosting events and hosting parties and doing just the little things and networking, having time to do it. And I was doing it all. And it was just a really transformational point rather like, so I graduate in 2020. It sounds forever away now, like with the pandemic. I graduate in 2020 and I published this research and it's basically looking at, so my degree is in organizational behavior and it's basically looking at college athletics as a whole and how it is serving or lack thereof their Black female athletes, and like what's missing in the experience. How is this transitioning into their professional careers? So I interviewed former athletes like myself, Black women, and I was like, okay, this is great. And I publish it, and it's online right now, literally on ProQuest. But I was like, okay, academic jargon, not everyone's going to read that. The people that I need to see it, the change makers, the NCAA, the schools, all of that, they're not reading this, long drawn out academia stuff. And so fast forward through the pandemic, and I'm like, okay, how can I use this research? So I start kind of putting it into this platform called Black and Ballin', which I've created like through the pandemic, which is, something I've been doing on Instagram where I'm like informing, and I'm, doing a lot of reels, and which are basically like, TikToks and all of that. And so fast forward through that, and I'm like, I still like something is missing. Like I want to be able to communicate with the people that need to read this the most. And so long story short, see, once you get me telling stories, it's like, ooh, like we're gonna go there. So long story short, after this chain of events that started pretty much with me reclaiming, all that I lost in grad school, or all that I lost in undergrad and going into grad school, I was like, okay, I'm going to repurpose this research, and I'm going to make it so that the people that I need to read it, the college athletes, the coaches, the admin, high school student athletes that are looking to do this, transitioning athletes that are still trying to figure it out, still lost, I'm going to make something for them, and I'm going to take it from my research, and I'm going to make it practical. I'm going to make it easier to understand. It's not your average ABCs. I definitely say it in the book, like, if you're if you're in middle school, you probably shouldn't be reading this. You may want to read it with someone, but just because I'm addressing mature topics, like we're talking about coaches, we're talking about big business, and I wanted to be able to provide transparency. And at the crux of it, I was like, okay, for student athletes that are completely lost, like have no idea. Because there's a lot of athletes that are out there that are, first gen in terms of, I don't have anybody in my family who's ever played college sports. I know I didn't. My parents were completely lost. So I was like, looking at them, if they have $20, this book can change their life. Like $20, your life can be changed, and you will be on a better path and be able to ask the right questions, be able to request certain things, be able to at least get people talking about these important topics, so that you won't be like going out of an experience saying like, I just wasted 4 years of my life, or more or less.
Right.
So that's kind of the story about like the chain of events of how it happened. And I just wanted to be able to put it all together, but in a way that the people that I need to see it would receive it. So that's how it kind of came about.
For sure. And so there's a few like really crucial things that I heard within that I want people listening to this to be able to understand, is that one, you had a challenge, you had a state that you were currently in that needed to be different. You were like, you know what? I'm not super happy with what's going on right now. And I need to go reclaim something that I feel that's missing. And then, which essentially gave you purpose, and you had a vision for where you wanted to be. You had an ideal state that you wanted to achieve. And then you made it your mission to be able to go and make that happen, and go get the research and go get all these other things. And you were driven, and you became super disciplined, it sounds like, to be able to make this happen, which a lot of people think when it comes to like making some dream come true or anything like that, the world is your oyster, but there are a set amount of disciplines that probably kept you on the path to being able to make this really happen and come to life, which is understanding how to say yes to certain things that are going to get you to that place that you want to be, and saying no to everything else. And that's okay, because it leads you to a position where you get to create massive change. And now there's people who get to benefit from the information that you're putting out there in a vehicle, which is this very readable book that you're talking about that's going to be coming out soon, that people can now arm themselves with, not just athletes, but also their families. So when it comes to the book, when one of the big things that I was hearing was, if somebody has, if there was a way to turn $20 into $1 million for an athlete and their family as they're going into college sports, like, when you think of, I mean, you listed athletes who really have no idea what the landscape
Mhm.
looks like, and all they've been
Mhm.
doing is just playing sports,
Mhm.
and they're getting ready to walk into college,
Mhm.
and there's the potential to get hit by a bus of
Yeah.
information, politics, and all these other things. What are the
Mhm.
main challenges that athletes or their families, if they're facing, would really benefit from picking up this book?
Well, I really want the book to be accessible. I was like, I don't understand why information is always, or not always, but sometimes really inaccessible. And it really sucks because that's where the most vulnerable populations, need to be. They need to be informed. And I look at college athletes, if separate youth sports with college athletes and then, or college sports and then professional, I look at college athletes as the most vulnerable because they're in this weird crux of like, I'm an adult, but not really. And I'm also, just getting this newfound freedom. So I have nowhere to really turn or like, go for guidance. And I'm trusting these adults who are supposed to have my best interests at heart, and they don't always, a lot of times. So, I mean, the biggest thing I can say is, honestly, I'm about to just mention one of my favorite chapters. Can I do that on here?
This is your show right now. We're living in it. This is
So,
all you right here. And I'm so glad that you actually brought that up, because I was going to follow it up with, what are some concepts that
mhm.
people need to know that are coming from your book that they could implement today to make a difference, and hopefully cause them to say, oh my gosh, this is just a taste. I need to pick up this book. So, I mean, the floor is yours.
Okay. Because clearly I'm very excited about this. But the first thing is read. We talked a little bit about it earlier, but read everything. And don't just, when your coach shoves papers in your face or you get a bunch of notifications saying sign off on this time for practice or whatever, slow your roll and actually read it. Like, I talk extensively throughout the book, and especially with NIL, which I also talk about in the book, you need to be reading everything, and you need to have a team behind you that is in your corner for you, not like for, any other type of gain. And I'm not talking like, oh, I need an expensive accountant or attorney or this, that, and the third, because that's where, college athletes are most of the time broke.
Yeah.
Just people that you trust, family members or friends or whoever, that can kind of even out the load, do things for you in terms of, hey, can you read this? Can you look this over? Does this make sense? So reading is a big, big emphasis. And I talk about a number of different examples. I've heard so many horror stories just about, I signed my life away and I didn't know I did it. I signed off on
Yeah.
these hours and I didn't know my coaches were doing that behind my back. So that's one of the biggest things in the book that I can say, like, yes, pick this up today because you will learn more about it. It's really funny because you're reading a book, but you're also learning more about the importance of reading
Yeah.
in college sports and the college landscape. And then I would also say another part of the book that is really important is the wellness side. So everybody's talking about like holistic athlete transitions and, oh, it's so important to think about the whole athlete and doing X, Y, and Z. Well, what does that mean? Like, do you even have your wellness routine? Because I surely didn't when I was, 20, 21 or whatever. Like when I was in college, I had no clue what a wellness routine was. I just knew that they were scheduling my life. And so I give tips just about wellness, where to start, how to establish your wellness routine. If you have like 15 minutes to yourself a day, because sometimes it comes down to that,
Yeah.
you're so exhausted and you're like hopping in the bed. If it comes down to 15 minutes, what are you doing within that time? Like, are you listening to your favorite album? I have candles all over the place. Are you lighting a candle and just like chilling out? Are you, doing some meditation? So just giving practical tips
Yeah.
so that they can just utilize them and be able to succeed, and
Right.
especially if they're not in the best space.
Right.
And the last thing I would say is everybody chooses their school usually because of the coach that's there and the resources that are there and the cool locker room and the fans and the this and the that. That's what you get caught up on when you're 17 years old. So I go through an extensive amount of just emphasis over why your coaches are there. One, to collect the paycheck and to get wins and to elevate. and understanding the whole business aspect of it so that your feelings don't get hurt. Like, man, I was like, there was way too many times where like I would just be breaking down, like, why is this happening? What's going on? And the truth is that your coach is there to collect wins and a paycheck. So emphasizing this so you can get to that mindset like up front. And again, I'm not saying that all coaches are bad, because that's not the
Yes.
case. There are some really good coaches out there, and a good coach can change your life for forever.
Yeah. And even those good coaches, they still have a livelihood. Like the stuff you're
Mhm.
saying, there's two different parties right now. And I think I want to clear the air is there are the people who probably, which the initial thought that came up for me when people listen to this are probably going to think this book is meant to hold these, like this system in check
Mm,
because we're athletes are being taken advantage of, which we
mm,
can agree they are.
mhm,
There's a lot of stuff going on. And this book is meant to potentially allow athletes to stand their ground and be able to say, hey, check yourself. I'm more than just an athlete.
mm,
There are people who might take that and go
mm.
with, they don't have my best interest at heart. And from what you just said, I want to clear the air here because I think
Mhm,
I'm hearing the other side of it, which is this is meant to arm an athlete with the information so that they can understand what to better expect when they go into college so that they can be more in the driver's seat of how they want to interact with it that is best for them in
mm.
their own best interest, because the people who have been a part of the system for a long time have those processes in place to make sure that they are taken care of. Most athletes don't take that time to be able to do that for themselves, and they need to develop those processes. And this gives them the opportunity to be able to do so. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yes. So everybody who's listening, like, do not panic. I this is not like
You're not starting a war here.
I'm not starting rebellion. It's things that I've learned along the way, not only from my own experience, from friends who are coaches, from former teammates, from former athletes. It's like, okay, what's missing? What's missing? And so with everything that's in the book, like I approach it organizationally. And so I think like, okay, the more involved that your employees are, let's, just think organizationally for a second, the more involved your employees are, the more engaged and understanding they will be of organizational processes, and maybe the system will work better if they're in this psychologically safe environment and they have the resources they need to thrive, right? So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And in
Yes.
every chapter, I'm always like, okay, you can look at it from this angle or you can look at it from this angle. I'm going to approach both because you may have both. You may be in the middle, like even when I'm talking about where you see yourself in your career, like I give a wide, a wide gamut. You may enter into college and give it 1 year of playing college sports and be like, yeah, this isn't for me.
Yeah.
Or you may roll through 4 years and have a career that's completely up and down like a roller coaster because of injuries or, one like mine, injuries and coaching changes and shifts and all of that. Or you may be a complete All-American and kill it. So, I give all these different options because I just want you to be aware. I want you, whoever is reading this book, to make the decision for yourself. But the issue that I have with the system is that it's not always readily available. It's not
Yeah.
always emphasized. And so that is what I was trying to prevent when I was like, okay, how can I get these athletes to be more informed, thinking
Right.
broader, but, still put them in the driver's seat and making their own decision for themselves. So,
Exactly. No, I completely agree. And I think this is something that is very much needed, especially in a complete and total landscape change of sports from any form of amateur level that is non professional, especially with NIL and all these other factors that are starting to present themselves to these
mm-hmm.
athletes. I don't know if I would even be able to be like, I don't know if I'd even get recruited with with the landscape that's currently in place, because I would have no idea how to navigate some of this
Yeah.
stuff with social media, with
Mm-hmm.
business, with all these different factors that are presenting themselves. And
Mm-hmm.
so this being, if nothing else, a foundational playbook for people to understand how they navigate these waters, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
put themselves in a position where they can make decisions for themselves. That's that's worth every single thing. And thinking about it from that perspective, for a $20 book, it's
20
incredibly
bucks.
worth the time. The time and the money and the value is there. But I know your time is super valuable with that said. And
Mhm.
so I'm curious, where can people go to be able to purchase this book? Because it's open for pre-orders right now. So where
It
can people
is.
go, and when does the book officially come out?
Okay, so you can go to author, regular spelled author, BrianaDuBose.com. That's where the book is right now for pre-order. I'm officially launching the book November 10th, which is National Letter of Intent Day, which, is very special to all of us who are former athletes or current athletes. It's like, the first day where you get to sign over, I don't want to say sign over your life, but sign your
Most
first.
athletes previously would sell their lives on those days, but now
Right.
athletes get to make decisions on those days.
Yes, you're making a big decision, one of the first big decisions in your life. So I'm launching the book on November 10th. That is a Wednesday, I think. So it's going to be available Amazon, probably Barnes and Noble. So, we'll kind of work with it. And then of course on
Yeah.
my own website. But
Yeah. If you go
yeah.
to author brianadubose.com, you
Mhm.
can go there. It's incredibly easy to pay for. I did it in 2 clicks because I have PayPal,
Mhm.
and it'll ship directly to you. I'm incredibly excited to be able to get it and to read it. No matter
Yes.
what, I want to have you back to do a little bit of a book review
Oh
and
my
talk a little
gosh,
bit about the
yes.
mindset behind some of that stuff, because I think there's going to be so much in there that can translate from not just sports, business, and life for
Mhm.
anybody, and be incredibly, incredibly valuable. And there will be some key things that I guarantee you I'm going to find in there that I'm going to just lock onto, that I'm going to want to understand even deeper about, because I think this is just the tip of the iceberg for a lot of this conversation. And I know
Yes.
there's people who have brought up the cultural aspect, the
Mhm.
mental aspect, the physical
Mhm.
aspect, but you're coming from it from a completely unique angle where you touch on a lot of those things, but it's really about understanding the landscape and how to
Mhm.
navigate this stuff and giving people a little bit of a map here.
Yeah.
So I'm incredibly excited. I hope everybody listening to this is. Um, and once again, head over to authorbrianadubose.com to be able to pick up your copy that's going to be shipping out in November, right in time to be able to read it while you're falling asleep after having Thanksgiving dinner.
Basically.
But Briana, this has been incredible. Where can people go to just connect with you and follow you and have, shoot you questions or anything like that?
Sure. LinkedIn has been like the move for me right now. I'm not gonna lie. I think because it's just more direct. Sometimes people reach out to me on Instagram and they have like all these funny different names and stuff. And I'm just like, wait, you're who and you do what again? So I mean, I don't mind. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at Briana L. DuBose. But like if you really want to connect with me and like let's have a conversation, put you on my Calendly, just hit me on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. There's so many athletes who are doing that now more than ever, and former athletes having that LinkedIn presence. And so anybody who's listening to this who wants to get in touch with anybody who I have on here, 99% of the time, I think there's one person who I haven't had on here, or who I've had on here who didn't have a LinkedIn. Everybody else does. It's a great platform. So follow Briana there, reach out to her, let her know that I sent you, let her know that you listened to this episode, and yeah, connect there. But Briana, I can't wait to have you back on here. I know you're super busy. But
It's
with
my
all of
life
it,
right now.
this has been awesome. And thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I can already tell that I can talk to you for a very long time. Great
Uh,
interviewer, or just
yeah,
conversation. We're just having a conversation. So
30 minutes has flown by. So
completely flown by.
it happens to me all the time. But Briana, I appreciate you. Can't wait to have you back on.
Absolutely.